بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل بفضل الله وبرحمته فبذلك فليفرحوا هو خير مما يجمعون صدق الله العلي العظيم. My dearest, my most respected, my honorable elders, beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First and foremost, we begin by taking this opportunity, this unique and wonderful opportunity, to come together in a house from among His houses for the sole purposes of worshipping Him, glorifying Him, and praising Him. Ultimately, to send salutations upon His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we pray that Allah Azza wa Jal will continue to facilitate these kinds of opportunities for us in the future, inshallah. We're only moments from the month of Ramadan, the month of mercy, the month of rahmah, the month of Allah's outstanding grace. And it's imperative that when we consider what needs to be done in order for us to extract the most juice that we possibly can from this upcoming month, forgiven throughout this month, when we consider that, it's imperative, it's important that we understand that in order for us to do all of those things, to have our sins forgiven, in order for us to seek the mercy of Allah, benefit from His mercy, in order for us to do as many good deeds as we possibly can, stockpile on those good deeds, it's imperative that we prepare well with absolutely everything. Assalamu alaikum. With absolutely everything. There's a level of preparation that's required in order for that thing to be successful. When you prepare a dish, if you prepare it haphazardly, half-heartedly, right? You just stick all the ingredients together in one go without letting it simmer, without letting it boil, without letting all of the necessary steps to take place. What's going to happen? The dish is not going to be tasty, right? The food is not going to be tasty. There's going to be something off about it. Why? Because it wasn't prepared well. Whereas on the other hand, if you take your time in completing every single step, right, then it's going to have that beautiful taste, that flavor is going to be strong, and you're going to ultimately enjoy it. In exactly the same way, there's a sense of preparation that takes place before you cook that dish. The ingredients that you buy, you have to ensure that you're buying the right ingredients. If you miss a certain ingredient, what's going to happen? The dish is not going to. You can have everything else. Say for example, you're cooking a curry, you have everything, but you don't have salt, right? No salt. You remove the salt from there, there's a massive lack within that taste. In exactly the same way, we can look at certain steps that we must accomplish in order to extract the best that we can from the month of Ramadan. We can look at certain things that we need to fulfill in order to ensure that our Ramadan doesn't go to waste. In the Quran, in the verse that I quoted before you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, قُلْ بِفَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَبِرَحْمَتِهِ فَبِذَلِكَ فَلْيَفْرَحُوا. Say, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, tell them. There's an extra emphasis when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in the Quran, قُلْ, O Muhammad, tell them, right? Tell them. It's important that they know this. بِفَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَبِرَحْمَتِهِ فَبِذَلِكَ فَلْيَفْرَحُوا. And with the grace and the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's upon you to rejoice. It's upon you to rejoice. Be happy when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you with something. Be happy when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala favors you or provides you with his mercy, His grace. هُوَ خَيْرٌ مِمَّا يَجْمَعُونَ. And that is better than everything that you have gathered. As in anything that you can possibly think of, this is far better. Showing joy, happiness, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you with something, that's far more important than anything else. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is stating in the Quran. So it's imperative that when the month of Ramadan comes, the first thing, when we talk about preparation for the month of Ramadan, the very first thing, it's not about the fast, it's not about everything, it's not about the Taraweeh and the schedule changes and the timing changes and everything like this. The very first thing is the feeling, the emotion. Ramadan is coming. How do you feel about that? Ramadan is coming. What are your emotions about this? If our feelings, when we hear that the Ramadan is drawing or inching closer, oh no, I've got to do this and I've got to do that and I've got to do that. Oh my God, I can't do this and I can't do that and I can't do that. You know, if those are our feelings, then there's something wrong immediately. Immediately, there's something wrong if our feelings are can't do this, can't do that, I've got to do this, got to do that, and becoming overwhelmed, then there's something wrong. We're not going to be able to extract, the juices of Ramadan that are required. We're not going to be benefit from it as greatly as we possibly think. So that's the very first thing. We have to show joy. We have to be happy at the arrival of the month. When Allah blesses you with anything, when Allah blesses you with any favor, when Allah showers His mercy upon you, فَبِذَلِكَ فَلْيَفْرَحُوا, then show your joy. Be joyful. Be happy about that. If we're not happy and overjoyed at the arrival of the month of Ramadan, then there's something wrong with our preparation. That means we're not going to be able to extract the most that we possibly can from this month. We're not going to benefit as much as we possibly could from this month. With anything, the preparation always comes early, right? You cannot prepare at the last minute. You cannot leave anything to the last minute. And even now, right now, we might think it's the last minute. It's not, right? We still have plenty of time until the month of Ramadan arrives. Um, some of us, as Muslims, we deceive ourselves. We deceive ourselves into thinking that we'll wait until the month finally arrives, when it's literally here, the moon has been sighted, we're here, it's Taraweeh tonight, and tomorrow we're fasting. We think to ourselves, don't worry, when it gets to that moment, it will hit me, right? And suddenly I will change. If I'm not, don't worry, I'm not praying right now, but Ramadan is just here, it's tomorrow. And when it starts, I'm going to start praying. I haven't recited any Quran throughout the entire year previously. But you deceive yourself into thinking that when Ramadan arrives, when it's finally here and it's here tomorrow, I will start my recitation immediately, as if, I never left it. That's deception to the highest degree. That's us. You know how you tell yourself something when you fully well know, if you thought about it, it's incomprehensible, it's unachievable. But you tell yourself and you make yourself believe that it is. No, 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 no. It is because you want it to be so. But that's not the case. That's not the case, and that's not going to happen. Change is incremental. Incremental means that change happens in stages. Okay? Change takes place slowly. And the greater the change, the more time that change takes. You cannot expect changes to arrive overnight. You cannot do that. If I plant a seed today, I'm not expecting the flower to sprout tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, I'm not expecting to wake up and there's a beautiful rose in my garden from the seed that I planted the night before. It doesn't make sense. If I plant the seed today, I know that there's an amount of time that it's going to take in order for that seed to sprout. And there's things that I need to do in order to assist that growth. I need to water it. I need to ensure that the sunlight is hitting that area. I need to ensure that there's enough vegetation around that to support that seedling's growth. Do you understand? So there's a lot of things that we need to do and that we need to accomplish. We cannot expect the change to be instantaneous. It doesn't happen. Very rarely, as human beings, do we experience overnight dramatic change. Very rarely. You can say for for argument's sake, if you were to make the argument that someone suffers a near-death experience and that makes them change, right? Yes, there's potential for that to happen, but we're not waiting for any near-death experiences in order to change, and we shouldn't certainly rely upon, you know, amazing, fantastic things happening to us in order for us to change. We have to consider. We have to. And I always stated this every single Ramadan. We have to consider that every Ramadan that we approach, every Ramadan, we have to consider it to be our last and final one. That's important. That's how the Sahaba approached their Ramadan. I've mentioned this on many occasions before. What did they used to do? They used to, for 6 months prior to the month of Ramadan, they would beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, Ya Rabbi, oh Allah, give us life so that we may be able to experience the month of Ramadan once again. And when the month of Ramadan would finally arrive, bearing in mind they'd be waiting for it almost half a year, right? The levels of anticipations are through the roof. When it finally arrives, those individuals who've been waiting for half a year, do you think they're going to let a single moment go to waste? Of course not. They're going to do whatever they can. They've begged Allah for these moments. They're not going to let these moments go to waste. Okay? And then once the month of Ramadan would end, they would cry, they would beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept their services, accept their deeds, forgive their sins. And for the next 6 months, they would beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give them the opportunity to experience this feeling once again. The entire year revolved around the month of Ramadan. Whereas us, we only consider the month of Ramadan. I would like to say a week beforehand, but that's even not the case. Now it's basically the last day, the very last night, when it's like, oh, is Ramadan tomorrow? Moon's been set? Okay, that's the very last night. And then when we consider our preparations for it, when we consider our preparations for Ramadan, how we approach it is far more, it's much different to the way the Sahaba approached theirs. You see, those individuals who have been preparing for this month begged Allah for these moments. When it comes to those moments, do you think they begged Allah regarding, the potential, changes in their diet that are going to occur to make those things easy for them? No. Do you think they begged Allah regarding their work schedules? I said, oh Allah, we beg you give us the month of Ramadan and ensure that our work doesn't affect our achievements. No, that's not what they did. They begged Allah for those moments that they can experience in Ramadan where they can feel the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They can feel the separation from the shackles of shaitan who's now chained, right? The freedom that they would experience resulting from that unshackling, right? The amount of mercy that they would feel in the month. They begged Allah for those moments. They begged Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those moments, those feelings that they would experience, the amount of good deeds that they would be able to perform, and then those good deeds are going to be multiplied by 10. They prayed for those moments. They begged Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those moments. Consider ourselves now. How do we approach it? When it comes to the last moments, what are we concerned with the most? Honestly, look at you. Let's remonstrate with ourselves and consider what during the last moments of Sha'ban and the upcoming month of Ramadan, or the moments of Ramadan's arrival, What are our concerns at that very during those very last moments of Sha'ban and the very first moments of Ramadan? Our concerns are related to our diets and our food, our suhoor and our iftar, our schedules in terms of waking up, in terms of going to sleep, our work schedules, and how we're going to work our way around Ramadan. That's what we're concerned with the most. Extra acts of worship are not considered within that. Um, the feeling, like I said, قُلْ بِفَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَبِرَحْمَتِهِ فَبِذَلِكَ فَلْيَفْرَحُوا. Now say with the grace and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is upon you to rejoice, is upon you to show happiness. That's the very first thing that we must feel, a sense of happiness, a sense of joy. But I feel like the vast majority of us, we feel a sense of trepidation, a sense of fear when it comes towards the end. How am I going to do? What's going to happen with this? What's going to happen with that? You know, that's not a good mindset to be in. That's not a good place to be in. If your feelings when the month of Ramadan is arriving is thinking about loss being over before anything else. That's the only way. If we prioritize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His worship, that's the only way. And how can we go about prioritizing the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? By preparing the acts of worship beforehand. Yeah? So, like I said, that dish is not going to be great, is it? If you've haphazardly, half-heartedly just threw all the ingredients together, it's not going to. You have to let everything simmer. You have to put things in at the right time, right? And then it's a process. In exactly the same way, we cannot expect change to happen overnight. It's incremental. It has to happen in stages beforehand. Let's consider the things that we need to get right. We're going to be praying in the month of Ramadan. Why not start those prayers now if we're not praying as, as often enough? We're going to recite Quran in the month of Ramadan, inshallah. Why don't we start reciting portions of the Quran now to get ourselves used to that? Right? Maybe we need to improve certain aspects of our recitation because we want to. The better you read, the more reward you will gain, and we want to gain and maximize our reward as much as possible, right? So why not do that now, right? When it comes to schedule changes, when it looks at our work, we have, you know, subhanallah, even work is a form of ibadah. It's a form of worship, is it not? When you work to earn and to take care of yourself, your family members, to provide for them, that's an act of worship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking or the provision of rizq is a form of worship. How can we maximize that particular act of worship? Wherever we're working, is there not potential that we can perform other acts of worship within that as well? Right? Is it not possible that we can recite certain adhkar? We can recite Quran, we can listen to the Quran being recited, right? Some of us are working, we're working out, we're doing this and we're doing that. We've always got our head with our AirPods in our ears, right? And what are we listening to the vast majority of time? If we're not listening to music, we're watching something, we're listening to a podcast, we're doing this. We can sit and listen to a podcast for 2, 3 hours. Come on, we can. We've done it. I've listened to a podcast for 2, 3 hours. Listening, not even watching. Listen to people talk for 2 to 3 hours. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. But when it comes to Taraweeh and listening to an expert reciter of the Quran, recite beautifully the verses of the Quran for those 2 hours, Allahu Akbar. It's not as easy, is it, as listening to that podcast? Then unfortunately, it's too long. It's too long. How am I going to do this? Every single night. Every single night. in Ramadan. You see? Well, I need to prepare for tomorrow. If I'm in Taraweeh every night, how am I going to drop the kids off to school in the morning? How am I going to do my school run in the morning? How am I going to do this in the morning? How am I going to get out for work at 7 o'clock in the morning? You see? These hows, we can't blame them on shaitan, right? Because shaitan is locked up by that stage. He's shackled. But the difference between us and him is what? The difference between us and him is that he prepares well. Shaitan prepares better than us for the month of Ramadan. How does he prepare? He knows, he knows what's going to happen when Ramadan arrives. He's going to be chained, right? He knows that. So his impact is going to be it's not going to be that severe. It's going to be lessened because as a result of his shackling, his chaining. So what does he do? He prepares beforehand. He prepares so well. He prepares us, me and you, so well that when he finally leaves, we don't even realize and notice that he's gone. Is that not the case? Shouldn't we feel like when the shaitan is gone, we should feel like you know when something happens and you a huge sense of relief and euphoria that you feel. We should feel that, right? We should feel like he's gone. Shaitan's gone. I can feel the fact that he's gone. But we don't, do we? Nothing changes, it seems, for us personally as individuals. Not saying that nothing changes in general, but for us personally, we should feel that separation. He's gone. That constant waswasas that were in my ear, they're gone. I can just focus on ibadah. I can focus on my relationship with Allah now. We should be able to feel that, but we don't. Why don't we? Because he's prepared us so well that once he's left, he knows that listen, I've got my claws deep inside this individual, right? And it's difficult for him to get away from it. So a mere month, a mere Ramadan, for him, he's thinking a mere Ramadan is not going to change that. We have to prove him wrong. We have to ensure that we feel the lack of his presence in Ramadan by considering the things that are important. The acts of worship in Ramadan that we take for granted, like for example the fasting, like for example the Taraweeh at night, right? And then we make excuses for ourselves for not being able to fulfill them. Wallahi, and I'll mention them to you when the month of Ramadan starts. You know, as an Imam, I've been an Imam for about 12 years. So often I get people, especially close to Ramadan, asking me questions. You'd think, right? You'd think to yourself that if you're in my position and I was to ask you, what do you think the vast majority of people approach me with when the month of Ramadan begins? You'd think it'll be questions with regards to the fasting itself, how to maximize the acts of worship, how to do this and how to do that. The vast majority, 90%, I would say, over 90% of the questioning that I receive and the responses that I have to give are in relation to what? They're in relation to the fast itself. I've got this ailment. Am I allowed to fast? Should I fast? Should I not fast? You know, I've got these issues. Should I fast? Could I fast? If I don't fast, what should I do? Those kind of things. You will not believe the most ridiculous reasons, some of them, that I have received from people saying that we've got this issue and as a result of it, we won't be able to fast. Like someone, you know, I'm not going to mention them to you. Like they're as ridiculous as I've got to drive from here to London tomorrow, right? I'm not even, this is not, I wish I could say to you that this didn't happen. I wish I could say it to you that I didn't. I'm driving from here to London tomorrow. London in the UK. Maybe you're thinking there's a London perhaps in France or in Germany where there's a 20-hour drive. I don't know. No, London here in the UK, the capital of England, right? I have to drive from here to there tomorrow. could I not fast because it's going to be a little bit difficult for me? Because obviously, we look for reasons not to. I've heard that, the traveler, because I'm a traveler, and I would have to shorten my prayers. I'd be like, but that journey of yours, for the travelers who were allowed not to fast, their journey was in desert Arabia, right? Where that journey from here to London would take days, right? That's how long it would take for them, and that's why there was something that was, a rukhsa that was granted to them. But for us, the journey that literally can take now, honestly, sometimes at points under an hour, we can realistically cover 60 miles on the right motorway under an hour, or even if it's just over an hour. That's not going to trouble you in the slightest. And those are the things that I consider when I look at it and I say, look at our priorities, right? Instead of considering, and this is the difference. I will tell you, right? This is the difference between us and our fasts in the 21st century, now, in this day and age, and the fasts of our parents and our elders and those individuals who are now 60, 70 years old. When I come across elders, I have children calling me, wallahi, I have done this myself. Children calling me saying, please, please, can you explain to my father and my mother, or my mother, that they shouldn't fast? The doctor has told them it's highly affects their health. They've got severe health issues, and they're insisting that they're going to fast irrespective of everything, and they need to take their medication or their life is in danger. Please, I'm trying to convince them. Imam Sahib, can you speak to them and tell them that they don't have to fast? Imagine that. I've done that on many occasions, and I've spoken to them, and they will say, no, what better way to die? This is what I've heard from them. What better way to die? If I'm going to have a heart attack, I'll have a heart attack in Ramadan. If I'm going to die, I'll die in Ramadan. I'm not going to miss my fast. There's the difference. Levels of Iman. There's levels to Iman. Levels of Iman that they're not going to let those moments go to waste. I'm not going to let this fast go to waste. I'm not going to let these moments go to waste. I might not get this opportunity. I might not be alive for the next month. See, they realize their mortality more. They recognize their mortality more. They know that they might not get this opportunity again. What makes us think that we will? What makes us believe that we will get this opportunity again? Even if we're younger, even if we feel like we have time on our side, we do not know. How many people do we know that didn't have health problems, that were younger, that weren't expected to die soon, who were with us last Ramadan, but they're no longer with us today? How many of them? You know them, I know them. It could be you and I. It could be you and I in the future. When we're considering this, when the next month of Ramadan 2025 comes along, right? We'll be looking maybe and thinking, yes, this person's not here, that person's not here. And we don't know. So imagine that. Consider it as the last. Those levels of preparation, they have to begin now. Don't wait for those last moments when Ramadan arrives. And the types of preparation need to change. What's the first thing that we consider when Ramadan comes? Oh, food. I need to get enough for suhoor. I need to have this and I need to have that. Usually we wouldn't consider those things. When Ramadan comes, then we start considering that more so than anything else. Look, that's just a byproduct of Ramadan. That's meaningless. Yeah? The things that we focus on are meaningless. The food, that's meaningless. It doesn't mean anything in Ramadan. It's the experience of the hunger, the feeling, the barakah, the blessings. Those are the things that we need to consider. Praying our salawat, right? This is the time to start. If we're not praying already, start praying now. If we're not making our way to the masjid now already, we have to start now. We can't expect to wait until the month of Ramadan. Praying our extra prayers, nawafil, recitation of the Quran. That starts now. Your generosity and charity. You don't just need to be generous in Ramadan. The Prophet ﷺ is described as the most generous of people. That's how he's described. The Prophet was the most generous of people, but he would be far more generous in the month of Ramadan than he already was. Right? So we don't need to just become generous in Ramadan and be stingy elsewhere. Start your generosity and acts of charity now. Controlling your tongue, controlling your desires, moderation in eating. Those are things that we need to control. We've got some big issues, and inshallah, I'm going to be talking about them in Ramadan when we talk about fasting, moderation in eating. The vast majority of the ailments and the illnesses, the ailments that we as a community, as a Muslim community, face are in relation to the food that we consume. Right? How can we improve that and improve our diets when the month of Ramadan begins? Start considering those things, not considering them, improving upon them now. Right? Ramadan is knocking on the door. Don't think it's a week away or 2 weeks away or 10 days away and start counting the days. It's knocking on the door. And we've got our hand on the handle ready to open the door right now. Just click the handle, open the door, and let Ramadan right in. That's the moments that we're in right now. It's going to be on top of us. And bearing in mind, I'm talking to you right now about preparation. By Allah, it's going to feel like tomorrow I'm delivering the khutbah for Eid. That's what it's going to feel like. That's how quickly it's going to go. So start considering that now. Consider the fact that the time is going to pass you by, and this is why it's so important to let each and every moment that you have be benefited by it, make it inspire you, allow it to inspire you, and bring about lasting change in our lives. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me and you the tawfiq and the ability to act upon the teachings of the Quran, the noble sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. For those of